Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. 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 Gaura Premanande, Hari 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 Bo. Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Srimad His Divine Grace Lacy Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yuga Dharma Ki Jai. Transcendental Book and Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai. Sunday Law Feast Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jangan ada pasal lagi.
Ya.
Spiritual master are the only way by which you can obtain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of pure suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the reflection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic remains. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and the Lord master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us, and give us the shade of the lotus feet. May your fame be spread all over the universe. We take shelter at the lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Kennst du Rasashraya? Hab ich ihn kennen? Bestimmt.
Hat er auch gestern die Lecture gegeben?
Hast du auch gestern die Lecture?
Nein. Ah, nee, das war jemand anderes. Ja, natürlich kenne ich ihn.
Der war ein bisschen jünger gestern, oder?
Nee, gestern war...
Wer ist es sein?
Der Halbbruder.
Für Kamera. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. We have a Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Charitamrita.
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Toya Gora More Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Toya Gora More Krishna Chaitanya Toya Gora More Toma Pina Prabhu Daya Guru Sitapati Advaita Kosai Daya Guru Sitapati Advaita Kosai Tava Kripa Pale Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Bhattajuka Sri Jiva Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Jaya Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Jaya Gora Nitai Jaya Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Jaya Gora Nitai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Nitai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol So, Hare Krishna everyone, good morning. So, today we are going to read from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 22, the process of devotional service. We are going to read 4 verses, starting from verse 150, and on the board you can see then the final verse, 153. So I would just suggest that I read the first 3 verses, and then for verse 153 we can then chant them together. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda,
Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda,
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda,
Jaya Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda,
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda,
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda,
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda,
Jaya Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda,
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda,
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda,
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So first the verse number 150. Ishte swarasiki raga parama vishtata bhavet tanmayi ya bhavet bhakti sashtra ragatmikodita. Do you actually read also word by word for the previous verse? Translation. When one becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his natural inclination to love is fully absorbed in thoughts of the Lord. That is called transcendental attachment. And devotional service according to that attachment is called ragatmika, or spontaneous devotional service. There is one small purport there. Prabhupada says this verse is found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.272. Text number 151. Ishte gada trishna ragera swarupa lakshana, ishte avishtata ei tatashta lakshana. Translation. The primary characteristic of spontaneous love is deep attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Absorption in thought of Him is a marginal characteristic. Ragamai bhaktirahaya ragatmika nama taha suni lupta hoi kona bhakyavan. Thus, devotional service, which consists of raga, deep attachment, is called ragatmika, spontaneous loving service. If a devotee covets such a position, he is considered to be most fortunate. Yeah, covet actually means begehren or begierde. So now we come to verse 153. Lopa vraja vasira bhava kare anugati Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti. So, Lopa vraja vasira bhave kara anugati.
Lohe vraja vasira bhave kara anugati.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti.
Lopa vraja vasire bhave kare anugati.
Lohe vraja vasira bhave kare anugati.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti. Lohe vraja vasira bhave kare anugati.
Lohe vraja vasire bhave kare anugati.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raga nugara prakriti.
Lobe vraja vasira pave kare anukati.
Lobe vraja vasira pave kare anukati.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raganukara prakriti.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raganukara prakriti.
Lobhe vraja vasira bhave kare anugati.
Lobe vraja vasira pave kare anukati.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raganugara prakriti.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raganukara prakriti. The Vaishnavis.
Lobe vraja vasira bhave kare anukati.
Lobe vraja vasira bhave kare anukati.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raganukara prakriti.
Shastra yukti nahi mane raganukara prakriti. Lobe, in such covetousness.
In such covetousness.
This means Begirde. Vraja vasire bhave.
Vraja vasira bhave.
In the moods of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, Vraja.
In the moods of the inhabitants of
Vrindavan, Vraja. Kare anukati
Kare anugati.
follows.
Follows.
Shastra yukti,
Shastra yukti.
injunctions or reasonings of the Shastras.
Injunctions or reasonings of the Shastra.
Nahi mane,
Nahi mane.
does not abide by.
Does not abide by.
Raga nugara,
Raganukara.
of spontaneous love.
Of spontaneous love.
Prakriti,
Prakriti.
the nature.
Nature.
Translation and purport given by His Divine Grace His Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If one follows in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan out of such transcendental covetousness, he does not care for the injunctions or reasonings of Shastra. That is the way of spontaneous love. Purport: Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that a devotee is attracted by the service of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, namely the cowherd men, Maharaj Nanda, Mother Yashoda, Radharani, the gopis, and the cows and calves. An advanced devotee is attracted by the service rendered by an eternal servitor of the Lord. This attraction is called spontaneous attraction. Technically, it is called Swarupa Ubalabdhi. This stage is not achieved in the beginning. In the beginning, one has to render service strictly according to the regulative principles set forth by the revealed scriptures and the spiritual master. By continuously rendering service through the process of Vaidhi Bhakti, one's natural inclination is gradually awakened. That is called spontaneous attraction or Raganuga Bhakti. An advanced devotee is situated on the platform of spontaneity, is already very expert in Shastric instruction, logic and argument. When he comes to the point of eternal love for Krishna, no one can deviate him from that position, neither by argument nor by Shastric evidence. An advanced devotee has realized his eternal relationship with the Lord, and consequently he does not accept the logic and arguments of others. Such an advanced devotee has nothing to do with the Sahajiyas, who manufacture their own way and commit sins by indulging in illicit sex, intoxication and gambling, if not meat eating. Sometimes the Sahajiyas imitate advanced devotees and live in their own whimsical way, avoiding the principles set down in the revealed scriptures. Unless one follows the six Goswamis, Sri Rupa, Sanatana, Raghunatha Bhatta, Sri Jiva, Gopala Bhatta and Raghunatha Dasa, one cannot be a bona fide spontaneous lover of Krishna. In this connection, Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haipe Akuti Kabe Hama Bujhabe Se Jugala Piriti. The Sahajiya's understanding of the love affairs between Radha and Krishna is not bona fide because they do not follow the principles laid down by the 6 Goswamis. Their illicit connection and their imitation of the dress of Rupa Goswami, as well as their avoidance of the prescribed methods of revealed scriptures, will lead them to the lowest regions of hell. These imitative Sahajiyas are cheated and unfortunate. They are not equal to the advanced devotees, Paramahamsas. Debauchees and Paramahamsas are not on the same level. Om Akyana Timrandasya Gyanan Shalashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Kuruve Nama Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapidam Yena Putale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tatadi Swapatantiham Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Buddha Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sangana Rakunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvedam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sangana Rakunatan Vitam Tam E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Svedeve Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpataruptyasha Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Paditana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ye Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I read the translation again. If one follows in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, out of such transcendental covetousness, he does not care for the injunctions or reasonings of Shastra. That is the way of spontaneous love. So again, Hare Krishna and a good morning, everyone. So first I beg for you all of your mercy and guidance, and also my spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, because today's topic is a quite elevated topic, and I am certainly not qualified to speak on it. So I ask for them guidance and your guidance also, that we can have some good discussion on this topic. So Mahaprabhu, he has visited before Vrindavan, and he's on his way back to Jagannath Puri, and on the way he is meeting Sanatan Goswami in Varanasi at the Chandrasekhar's home, and for 2 months they are discussing transcendental topics. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he has given a summary of their discussion in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think in 4 or 5 chapters. And now Mahaprabhu, in the previous verses, he has described Vaidhi Bhakti. Now he starts to explain what it means Raganuga Bhakti. Rupa Goswami, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he explains what Uttama Bhakti means. We have the famous verse, Anyapi Lashita Shunya, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukulyene Krishnanu, Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. The Bhakti Uttama, the highest or unalloyed love for Krishna, that is without any material desires, that is devoid of material activities, karma activities, and mental speculations or jnana, and it is favorably and enthusiastically rendered activities for Krishna. That is Uttama Bhakti or unalloyed devotion. And Rupa Goswami, he says, to achieve that Uttama Bhakti, he partitions, or he gives 3 stages till one achieves that stage of love, of pure love for Krishna. And the first stage is sadhana bhakti, or devotional service in practice. At this stage, most of us are currently in. The next stage is bhava bhakti, devotional service in ecstasy. And the last stage is Prema Bhakti, devotional service in pure love. And in the first stage of Sadhana Bhakti, he gives two kinds of Sadhana Bhakti or devotional service in practice. The first one is Vaidhi Bhakti, so devotional service according to regulative principles, where we follow rules and regulations. And the second one, which we heard actually today, is Raga Anuga Bhakti, so spontaneous devotional service. And a big topic, it is a hot topic or a big debate is going on, who is actually eligible or qualified to perform Raganuga Bhakti. We have this discussion in our Krishna conscious movement, outside of ISKCON, but also this is a topic discussed between ISKCON and the outside world. And Srila Prabhupada's standpoint on this is very clear. So I thought in today's discussion we will see who is actually qualified to perform Vaidhi Bhakti and who is qualified to do Raganuga Bhakti, and also what are the dangers if one prematurely tries to imitate high advanced stages. So, and also today we will have several things from the Nectar of Devotion, which was written by Rupa Goswami, and I find it very interesting that actually the topics Mahaprabhu is discussing to Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami is mentioning in his books. So probably before Mahaprabhu met Sanatana Goswami, when he met Rupa Goswami, probably they have already discussed their topics. And maybe certainly when Rupa and Sanatana Goswami were meeting, they were discussing this topic. So we find many things also in the Nectar of Devotion. And to start, I want to give one example, and I hope with that example we can understand some points and also where we stand. And this example, I think maybe parents, they can relate to it, or children, or those of you who have grown up as a child in Krishna consciousness, you might also relate to this example. Parents, they try to, at a very early age of their children, they try to engage and incorporate the children in devotional activities. Parents try at a very early age that the children are already incorporated in the worship which is going on at home. And like cleaning, doing arati, offerings, singing kirtans. And what happens is when you have siblings, you have many children, the parents will give you certain services for individual siblings. And you will have kind of a schedule at home between your siblings, who is at which days doing an arati, who is doing the offerings, etc. And usually children, they are very naturally loving and caring, so when they do the offerings, they will do it with love, usually. But sometimes, and it's not sometimes, it happens regularly, the enthusiasm is not so great, I can tell you. So, for example, one day it's your sister's or brother's schedule to do the offering, and you are coming from home and you say, okay, my sister is going to do this, I have a little bit free time for my sense gratification, I can play or watch TV or whatever, and you come home and then your parents say, your sister, she has to study or something happened, she cannot do the offering, you have to do it now. And as a child, your plan for your sense gratification is gone. You think, oh no, now I have to do the offering. And at that time, some frustration comes. You take the arati plate, you go in front of the altar, maybe you have a picture or a deity, you put the plate, you take the bell, and you don't ring it, you smash it. You say, why always me? Always I have to do the service, not my sister or my brother, And then you ring the bell, all the relatives, the neighbors, everyone is afraid. And I think maybe even Krishna is afraid and says, boy, I take your offering, calm down. And this is a usual thing, also in the temple life. You can see today it's a free day, and suddenly the temple commander comes and says, the cook is sick, you have to cook. And we can ask ourselves with how much love at that situation we will perform these activities. And I think with this example I want to show that we don't have now natural love for Krishna or spontaneous love. When we are honest with ourselves, we have some love, otherwise we will not be here, but it's not yet pure love. So to attain the stage where we have that pure love, we have to get some training or some practice. And that practice is sadhana bhakti, which trains us how we can use our body, mind, and senses in some activities that are favorable to the Lord, to the devotional service, so that we can advance to higher stages and finally where we can have natural love for Krishna. And the first part of that sadhana bhakti is Vaidhi bhakti, devotional service according to rules and regulation, two regulative principles. And these activities, these are not done with attachment or naturally attachment, but we do these activities according to scriptures, scriptural injunctions and the orders of the spiritual master, as an obligation or as a duty that we know if we do these activities, we will get purified. And these activities, they are purificatory activities. These activities, they remove our material contamination till we understand that we are pure souls and devotees, servants of Krishna. And Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, he describes an eligible candidate or a characteristic of a Vaidhi Sadhaka Bhakti, a devotee who is practicing Vaidhi Bhakti. And I think it's very interesting what he says. He says, or actually he is quoting Krishna from the 11th canto, and Krishna says of these devotees, he says, having awakened faith in my topics, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still unable to renounce all material sense enjoyment. This is a description of a Vaidhi Sadhaka Bhakti, and he says, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, he knows that it leads to a misery and he sincerely repents for it. And I think we can all relate to this statement. I think most of us are in this position. We know that sense gratification is not the way to go, but still we haven't fully given it up. So we still have a tendency for sense gratification. And those devotees, that is a qualification or a characteristic of a devotee who is practicing Vaidhi Bhakti. And why do we need all these regulations and rules and principles? Mahaprabhu, he explains just some verses before he spoke to Sanatana Goswami, namely, Smartavya Sadadam Vishnu, Vismartavya Na Yatuchit. That the purpose of all these rules and regulation is that we always remember Vishnu or Krishna and never forget him. So this is actually the reason why we do all these rules and regulations and these principles. Sri Sri Jagannath Baladeva Subhadra Maharani ki, Shri Gauranitai ki. And all the rules and regulations which we follow, they are actually there to help us to achieve these two things, that we never forget Krishna and that we always remember him. Mahaprabhu, he explained that the Vaidhi Bhakti has 64 angas or limbs, activities, and 9 of them we know from Prahlad Maharaj, where he says Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, remembering, all these 9 activities. And Mahaprabhu, he also says that there are 5 potent activities or limbs of Vaidhi Bhakti that we can do. Does someone remember? Sorry? Yes, but that is on the contained in the 64, but he speaks of 5 potent ones specifically. Chanting holy name, living in the holy Dharma, worshipping the deities, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and association of devotees. And which one is the most important? Chanting the holy name. This is our most important rule or principle which we have, which the spiritual master gives to us. So we have heard now some characteristics of Vaidhi Bhakti. Now see what Mahaprabhu says about Raga Anuga Bhakti. And for that we need first explain what it means, who is a Ragatmika Bhakti. Some verses before we heard the description of Ragatmika Bhakti, or these are devotees who have spontaneous love, incomparable spontaneous love, due to their natural inclination, and these devotees, they are Nityasiddhas or liberated, eternally liberated living entities living in Vrindavan, the Vrajavasis. They are the Ragatmika Bhaktis. They just have natural love for Krishna. And that love has two symptoms. Mahaprabhu says, he says, first of all, Gada Trishna, so they have a deep attachment to Krishna, and Avishtata. That means they are always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. So these are the Ragatmika Bhaktas. And the Raganuga Bhakta is one who follows these devotees because he has such a great covetousness, such a great greed and wish to also follow in their footsteps. He has such a deep attachment that that devotee is following one of the particular devotee of Vrindavan. That is a Raga Nuga Bhakta. And the characteristic Mahaprabhu gives is, we heard, transcendental covetousness. This is the quality or lope, or in other words, begirde, or kind of transcendental greed, that makes you qualified to attain or to perform Raga Anuga Bhakti. And in this stage, they absorb in a particular devotees, Vrindavan devotees activities, meditate on that, and do the devotional service in that way. But now we also see that that is not such an easy task. Prabhupada is speaking of pretenders or imitators, sahajiyas. These pretenders, they will say that for Vaidhi Bhakti we have heard all the qualification one needs. And now for Raganuga Bhakti they will point out you only need to be greedy for that position. So we are all greedy for that position, so we are eligible to that, to perform Raganuga Bhakti. That is their argument. It's a dangerous argument, and what would you reply?
Can you say again what the argument is?
They would say, here Mahaprabhu says the only qualification is lobe, so transcendental greed to attain that stage. And they will say, we have that greed, we want to follow them, so this makes them qualified to this. They don't say we don't need, they say they don't need any rules and regulations to follow the 4 regulative principles or etc. Point out this verse, for example. But this verse, it's translates as transcendental covetousness. It's not just a cheap, simple greed to perform or follow this. It's a very deep attachment to Krishna which leads to this transcendental greed. It's not a childish greed. In my previous example, I remember when I first got my arati plate, you know, I wished for an arati plate. My parents gifted me one, and I was like greedy for this, and I got it and I performed. But it was a childish greed, because one day I want to do arati and another day it's not. And this is the position of usually those pretenders. It's not a transcendental 24/7 attachment for Krishna. It's just a little attachment they have, and they have an attachment for sense gratification, but they pretend with this verse that they are eligible for that. And I want to give kind of these reality checks that we can also have, like with the first example of my childhood. It's a reality check we can always ask in our life: how much really do I love Krishna, and with how much love do I perform these activities? And so in that stage where I didn't have transcendental love for Krishna, and one day I was doing with love, another day not, the parents, what do? They instruct this child about Krishna. They give some transcendental knowledge, or other way, they give some Sashtra Jnana. They give some wisdom from the Shastras and explain first, you see, Krishna is not an ordinary person. We are not dealing with an ordinary person. You are dealing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you cannot do it one day with love and other day not. You have to be clean, you have to do it regularly, on time, with love. And these are the instructions they give us. They explain what the position of Krishna first is. They explain that Krishna is Janmadi Asyata, that everything comes from him, emanates from him. He is the reason for all this existence and creation. He is the Ishvara's Parama Krishna. He is the transcendental and highest enjoyer and controller. And they first explain to us the position, what Krishna is. And they insert a little bit of awe and reverence in our activities, that we start to perform our activities with utmost care. And awe and reverence, this is also a term that the Sahajiyas usually don't like. They say, we don't want to worship Krishna with awe and reverence, we want to worship him according to the 5 rasas. But awe and reverence, I think it has a bad name in the Western world, where one is usually fearful of God. One has the image of the fearful God who is punishing. But awe and reverence, actually, when the Acharyas mention it, it's not a fear that the materialists have of God, or maybe even the demigods are fearful of Vishnu, but that is because they are fearful that they will lose their material position. But a devotee, when he has awe and reverence, it's not that fear. It's a respect and understanding that Krishna is the purest of all, and all his associates and pastimes are such high and pure, and I am his servant. He is my master, and I am his servant. And that is the awe and reverence aspect when we discuss this. It's like your relationship with your spiritual master. You don't fear your spiritual master, you respect him. And that relationship is also then sweet. This is also what the Sahajiyas sometimes argue. We don't want awe and reverence because it's not a sweet relationship, but first you need to understand the position who Krishna and Vishnu are, before you can also understand his high elevated topics. And therefore also Prabhupada, for example, he says we worship Sri Radha and Krishna as in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, so that we first understand to perform all our activities in utmost care until we start to love and awaken a natural inclination, a natural love for him. And the next argument these pretenders would say as Sahajiya is that we hear here, for example, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami says that the Raganuga Bhaktas, that the qualified, they have a natural inclination, or that their love is coming out of their natural inclination. And then they start to worship a particular devotee of the Vrindavan. And then the Sahajas would say, look, I don't have taste for all other aspects of Krishna and pastimes. Here the Shastra says, if you have a particular taste for a particular devotee and activities of Krishna, that is a characteristic of a Raganuga Bhakti. So we have a particular taste, so we are qualified for this position. And what would your argument be? A particular taste for a particular service or a devotee and a particular pastime of Krishna does not mean no taste for all the other pastimes of Krishna. It does not mean that you don't like to hear all the previous 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Sahajas, for example, say they want to hear elevated topics and jump into the 10th canto, but actually a true devotee, a true Raganuga Bhakta, it is not that he doesn't have taste for all the other pastimes. A true Raganuga Bhakta, he also has a taste to hear, for example, the 2nd and 3rd canto, where Krishna describes how, as Purusha avatars, as Karanataka Sai Vishnu, how he manifests the universe. A devotee also has taste for that, because that is also an aspect of Krishna, the creation. And I think I'm giving this kind of argument and counter-argument so that we can also, in our life, when we meet these pretenders, that we can see, do they have taste for all the pastimes or not? And it's also an indication for ourselves. If we don't have taste for all the activity and literatures Srila Prabhupada has given, probably we have to develop that taste, Usually 2nd canto and 3rd canto, it's very difficult topic because it's philosophically dense cantos. And I think we should imbibe the mood of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Bodhayanta parasparam kadyantas chamami, that we come together as devotees, we discuss these topics and awaken the taste among ourselves, that we understand all these activities of Krishna are so magnificent, and try to understand aspects of Krishna that he's describing or presenting in these leelas. And this argument is also based on the fact that Rupa Goswami, he gives 2 definitions for the name of Krishna. He first explained Krishna means Krishna, all his expansions, incarnations, all his paraphernalias, his devotees, associates, his different dharmas and pastimes. So that is the first definition Rupa Goswami gives. Krishna means all the incarnation, everything contains in Krishna. So if you want to understand Krishna, therefore the Vyasadeva and Shukadev Goswami gives so many incarnations of Krishna, describes so many leelas that we understand Krishna. And then the second definition Rupa Goswami gives is then of Krishna is that particular Krishna in his original form in Vrindavan. And so we can understand Rupa Goswami is giving a guidance how to then approach also Krishna, that first we understand his everything what belongs to him, then we can also understand his particular original form. And then another argument the Sahajiyas would give is then, look, here we see Mahaprabhu himself says that the Raganuga Bhakta, he does not care for the injunctions or reasonings of Shastras. A true Raganuga Bhakta, according to Rupa Goswami Mahaprabhu, they don't have to follow the rules and regulations that we, the Vaidhi Bhaktas, follow. We will see why. And the Sahajiyas would point out, see, they don't have to follow, so we also don't have to follow. We just hear transcendental topics, we don't have to care for all the four regulative principles, etc. And because, according to this verse. And what would your answer be?
You're a lazy bastard.
can say that, and you can also quote Mahaprabhu some verses later. Maybe that gives also some reasonings for them, because Mahaprabhu says that the true Raganuga Bhakta, how does he behave? In just, I think in verse 156 or so, he says that he actually remains externally as a Sadhaka Bhakta, as a Vaidhi Bhakta. Externally, a true Raganuga Bhakta, he performs all rules and regulations. And just internally, he is living out or executing his Raganuga Bhakti. And that is very interesting, that a true Raganuga Bhakta, one who is in spontaneous love, he doesn't stop to follow the rules and regulation. He continues. And this is, I think, a very also important point that we can see. If someone comes with this argument, we can say, no, that is a wrong understanding. They also, actually, the true Raganuga Bhaktas, they follow the rules and regulations. I think it's similar to Krishna in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he doesn't have to actually perform any duties because he's the Supreme. But why does he do it? To give an example, to set an example, to not bewilder the world, to set an example. He follows all the rules and duties, so that those who are in the beginning stage, that we understand how to behave. So that true Raganuga Bhakta, he performs all rules and regulation. He comes to the Mangalarati and chants and everything, and he maybe even does it with more love and enthusiasm than we would do. You know, he would come for Mangalarati with that great enthusiasm, and we will be very sleepy and look at the watch clock and say, yeah, you know. So, yeah, the time is running very fast, so let's see. I will shorten it a little bit and then we will conclude. And yeah, no, I think I conclude then, because the other points would take some time. So I will conclude with the statement that we are here, or Prabhupada came here, that we ultimately achieve these higher levels of devotional service. But he first emphasizes that we have to go through the proper training. So what we have to do, if we are sincerely following the rules and regulations of the Vaidhi Bhakti, if we follow our spiritual master and those instructions, and especially chant the holy name as our spiritual master has instructed us, then we will ultimately also achieve that stage, because the holy name, it contains everything that we require to achieve the ultimate love for Krishna. The holy name, it gives us realization that we need in the beginning of our devotional service, that we are not this body, that we are spirit souls, that we are servants of Krishna. That the holy name reveals, but the holy name also reveals all the highest aspects of devotional principles. So if we stick to the rules and regulations, to the acharyas and the holy name and our spiritual master, we will then also ultimately can attain these high positions. So thank you very much. You have any? This is a very high advanced topic, and definitely I would have made some mistakes in explaining it. So please, if you have any corrections and statements, you're welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your lecture. It was very nice. I just was thinking how the person who has love for Krishna, he or she always thinks he doesn't or she doesn't have love for Krishna. So that's also a characteristic. So I was thinking, like, we have all this philosophy and we have all these gradations in a way, how to see where we are, but in the end it doesn't matter. Because, you know, if you are on the highest level, you don't even think about these things. You don't even assess yourself. Even I think sometimes we need this assessment just because we have this materialistic mind. And so I'm just talking about personally, when I personally assess myself according to what you said. But all these arguments are very good and very valid, because we need them when we have people who, you presented also the arguments of Sahajias and so on. I was also exploring this topic very much, and a nice example was given by this Prabhu who was here as a guest. I forgot his name. He was talking about Haridas Thakur, who thought he was the lowest because he couldn't complete his rounds. And then Mahaprabhu, he told him, like, you don't have to complete your rounds, you're already liberated. But he wanted to follow all these rules and regulations. And another example is Raghunadas Goswami, who was very renounced. But, as a sadhaka as you said, externally as a sadhaka, but internally he was on the spontaneous platform. And he's a good example of a person who is on Ragatmika, right, level. Where he actually follows the resident of Vrindavan, which is, I think, Rupa Goswami as Rupa Manjari, and then service to Radharani. So, it's an important topic, but it was very nicely presented. Thank you. I just wanted to share my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I can actually, then to that point also, that humility and, that the more advanced and is more humbler one is. And also one argument I hear from the Sahajiyas is, or they don't have actually also respect for other Vaishnavas who maybe worship Krishna in Dwaraka or as Vishnu worshippers. The Sahajiyas, they don't have respect for them, and they say, look, we have the highest, we have the Goloka Prem. And this is a very also wrong mentality or attitude, because when we are sincere or honest to ourselves, what makes it us qualified to actually talk the highest thing, Probably from all the yugas, we are living in the worst yuga. From all the places which we can live, we live probably in a place where Kali Yuga has most developed, in Switzerland, and we probably from all the families we can be born, maybe we are born in a most materialistic family. And if we think in that way, we are actually very, very fallen, And Mahaprabhu, he comes not only to give us pure love. If he just comes to give us pure love, that would be already amazing. But he gives us the highest principles of pure love, expressed in Vrindavan and by the gopis. So he's giving that, we are here. So what makes us qualified from jump to there? It's only because Mahaprabhu is magnificent. It's only his mercy and Prabhupada's mercy that ultimately will bring us to there. And I think that a devotee, a true bhakta and a practitioner, he will never forget his roots, and also always understand from where he comes and have that humble state, and understand only what it makes him qualified is the mercy of his spiritual master.
Thank you, Rasashraya Rama Prabhu. Very nice presentation and logically built up, very important. Thank you. I just want to make one point which I think came now to mind. I feel it's important. And I was thinking about Vamshidas Babaji, just as an example. Of course, it's an example of, it's an exception, but this is a devotee who was on the highest level and was not following externally. He was doing, and the reason why he did certain things, it's also difficult to understand. But when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples came in touch with him, they started to mentally criticize him. And Bhaktisiddhanta told, you just don't go there anymore, and you stay here. So I think, especially for us neophyte devotees, it's also important that we don't now take that and go out and scan the field and try to find fault and then point it out. But there's also a part in our culture where we, even though we might see something which doesn't fit to what we hear in scriptures, if we are inferior, it's not our position to point it out or to criticize. And this can actually be a big pitfall, that we commit an offense to somebody by misusing the knowledge. Maybe you want to say something about it, but I think it's relevant for the neophyte devotee as well.
I mean, first of all, I mean, looking around and criticizing, that is not the mood of a devotee anyways. So this is what I wanted to say, because first we have to look for ourselves, and we can only assess the level of those devotees who are actually under our guidance. You know, this is the principle which I usually see. I don't assess all the other devotees who I don't know. I only assess those devotees I know, who are in my sphere. So so I think it's just I mean, those who are very neophyte and who start to criticize, they will be anyways humbled by Krishna. Who start to criticize wrongly, they will be humbled anyways. And all the other devotees who are a little advanced and see that they are these other devotees who are performing Raganuga advanced, they don't usually criticize them, or as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he doesn't then let the neophyte also intermingle with them, kind of, he keeps them separate. So yeah, this is what I could say in this way, that I mean, as a general rules, we don't criticize anyone, and we can only correct those who are under our guidance. And these points which I have said is that specifically for those who come to us to challenge us, or challenge maybe even Prabhupada's teachings. For those who come in a challenging mode, we can give our point of view, And maybe, I don't know, there are other ways, but those ways that Mahaprabhu, the Goswamis, and especially Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Prabhupada has given us, that we study and we follow them, and this is our way. Any other point? Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because you said that attachment to Krishna the greediness is because of attachment to Krishna, but can it be also the greediness, that because of greediness the attachment develops to Krishna?
Yeah, I mean, it's the greed that leads to the raga, to the attachment, the spontaneous attachment. And to get that greed, I would say it's all the regulations and principles which we follow. So all the mechanistic activities which we do with Mangalarti, everything, that brings us to that greed, and that greed then to the attachment. So I can say that, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to add something I read, that prema is actually condensed love. And that's how I understood it from Shivaram Swami's book. So that's why we need to actually, as sadhakas, we have to practice so that we develop bhava, like these emotions towards Krishna, which they come through following all that you have explained. But then prema is just condensed bhava, and to me it's like what you said, there are certain moments in which we have love for Krishna, because if we didn't have love for Krishna, we wouldn't be here. So that's also a positive thing. Whatever we have is very good, and we should just nourish it, nourish it, nourish it. And then when it becomes condensed, that means that we have this love, as you said, 24 hours a day, so there is no moment in which we say, oh, now I'm tired or sleepy or something. That's how I also see it. So even though I'm just trying to also put it in a positive way, although of course we should assess ourselves and think we are in a humble way that we are the lowest and so on, but if we have certain emotion, we should also cherish it and then just build up on it. Like if we have a little greed, then increase the greed and so on through all these followings. So.
And Mahaprabhu, and also in then later I think Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's the 9 stages. So Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and then we go to Bhava and Prema. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think, explains that actually when the leaf or the seed of the Bhakti sprouts, there is one part Raganuga and one Vaidhi Bhakti from the same leaf that is sprouting. But the Raganuga is very small, and the Vaidhi Bhakti is kind of... What I want to say is that when we start doing, we have also some spontaneity or some love, some bhava. But it's sometimes there, sometimes not, and this we have to nourish fully, that it is then the 24 hours a day. It's not that only when one achieves bhava stage then he has bhava, but already before he has aspects of bhava or parts and prema, love, that then has to grow and grow till it is the, what you said, condensed. So it's... Okay, now then. Oh, yeah.
Hare Krishna, and thank you so much. It's a wonderful lecture. And I want to just share something. You mentioned now is 2 ways. And the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhaktas go to Vaikunta, different Aishwaryadam, after they get prema. And I read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur commentaries. I get it, this information. And another Bhaktas, Raganuga Bhaktas, they go to only Brajadam, Kulaka Vrindavan. Hare Krishna.
That is true?
Yes.
It's true. The mood which I usually understand from also Vaishnavas and pure devotees is that the 6th canto to Chitraketu, Chitraketu is saying this: Narayana Parasarva na gudaschana bipyati swarga apavarka narakesu abitulyartha darshina. I think it's interesting. Chitraketu got cursed, and Parvati says you can go to hell, and he humbly accepts it and takes a birth as a demon. And this verse says, and then Lord Shiva explained why he humbly accepts, is that those who are always Narayana Parayana or Krishna Parayana, always think of Krishna, they don't care if they fall to Patal, to Naraka, or they go to Swarga or wherever, And I think this is the mentality also Prabhupada gives, that at the end, a devotee does not care if he gets liberation. He just wants to serve him. And when one is qualified to serve such a way that he's in a Raganuga, he will go to Vrindavan. If his love for that is so strong, he's automatically ready for Raganuga Bhakti to go Vrindavan. And I think devotees should not be afraid, oh, I'm just now practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, I will end up in Vaikunta. They should not follow. Their mood should be worship Krishna, do devotion service regardless where you are. And that qualifies you to actually also enter the Raganuga Bhakti and then Vrindavan. This is the understanding I have. So sometimes, this is also and Sahajya, sometimes they say, you only do Vaidhi Bhakti, you will end up in Vaikunta, so come to us, But Prabhupada is giving another mood, that humbleness, that mood that you don't care where you actually end up, you just do devotee, perform devotion service. And that is actually also the mood of the Vrajavasis, They don't care if they end up in hell, They just want to serve. And that makes that Vaidhi Bhakti, then Bhakta, Sadhaka Bhakta, to qualify for Raganuga Bhakta.
Prabhupada said we are Rubanugas, ISKCON devotees. Then what's the meaning of Rubanugas? Yeah. We are follower of the Manchari, Rupa Manchari. Who is Rupa Manchari? Nitya. Yeah. Sita devotee. This is our process. This Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was a very good point you made now.
Now I think the hunger is ready for breakfast. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Rasashraya Rama Dasa ki.
Dienstag ist immer wieder Schimmer Bauer.
Ja,
das sind glaube ich echt gesagt.
Wenn ich das verstanden habe, der Disziplin gesagt, ich ist ja auch beziehungsweise eine Position wäre. Gegnerische Position, theologische Position zu entfalten, beziehungsweise dagegen zu argumentieren. Wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe.
Es gibt halt zwei Wege. Jetzt die erste ist halt Regeln.
Ja.
Jetzt wenn jemand einmal nimmt, zum Beispiel die 4 Prinzipien folgen.
Ja.
Das Regeln wie Chanten, Mangalarati, Ekadashi, Fasten und so weiter.
Ja.
Das ist eine Art von Bhakti. Und dann, wenn man je höher wird, da hat man dann einfach so viel Liebe für Krishna, dass man eigentlich automatisch alles macht. Man braucht keine extra Regeln, um rein zu sein. Und das ist halt die Frage, die Missverständnis, das man hat. Manche Leute sagen dann diesen Vers, zeigen sie, man braucht keine Regeln zu befolgen, aber das ist eigentlich nur für die ganzen Fortgeschrittenen. Die sind so fortgeschritten, die befolgen die Regeln halt automatisch. Ja. Und das ist halt so ein Punkt, dass man auch sagt, dass man sagt, die gibt, dass man aufpassen.
Das ist so ein typisches Ding, dass man den gesamten Kontext sich nicht ansieht und dann nur einen Vers rauspickt und sagt, schau mal hier. Ja, das machen die auch ganz oft, oder ganz viele Leute machen das auch mit anderen. Und dann frage ich mich nur immer, das machst du auch nicht bei anderen Büchern. Also beim Roman schlägst du auch nicht auf und sagst, ach guck mal hier, Bob hat
dann in der Schlagzeile oder so.
Und das ist, aber ich denke auch, dass viele Leute das wahrscheinlich machen, weil das falsche Ego da auch so gegenkickt.
Und das ist halt ein Grund für die, dann nicht die Regeln zu befolgen. Also dass sie kein Fleisch essen oder Alkohol trinken oder so. Aber ein reiner Devotee, der tötet automatisch keine Tiere.
Ja, weil das schon so in seiner ganzen Seele quasi manifestiert ist. Ja, Krishna war tatsächlich höchst interessant auch.
very nice street. This living since many years in almost all villages, so many prejudices. They are so, they are going Baba. It's out of love. Yes, if you have personal association with people, it's very nice. Because he's so sweet. Yes, he's singing. If he goes to another one, he's singing somewhere. And he got which one is in version of it. Then one time he went to Mahaman with him and he started he's singing very well and dancing. That is so cute. He's sporting a whole because he's playing. Everyone loves it. Singing and dancing. I was thinking we need it. There was such a devotees association. If you go to Vrindavan, if you get such a devotee association, you can understand what's the meaning of this high level part. It's so sweet. Everybody loves he was full of Shabbat rotis and he told us to go to bed. You don't feel anything, you are very happy to be. So much mercy of the he caught good food and he was so satisfied. And I understand it's so beautiful that you take some place and you take some place. How can you understand from people without association? We can read, we can give knowledge, but realization for me. Then I was thinking, we should go and take association. Even monkey can also teach you so many things. Monkey? Yes, the monkey can also teach you so many things. One time I can remember that I don't know, I went to a temple and it's very beautiful. The whole building was sitting without socks and what then is natural. Then I had the socks and shoes and cap and jacket, full collars, one monkey is accused for the me. Take my cap and yes, Krishna. So cute. And terrifying at the same time. And then I was no, but so many people go, why you are not attacked? No, I am not free. How can you come attack? This monkey eyes is so powerful looking me, but it's not angry. Then I understand, he will teach me something. He's a calm. Then I went to President, and then he said, I was teaching my God, now I am not doing like this. First, for me, it's important that behaving in this. First time when I was there, what I did, first I went to temple. After 2 days,
Then one of the children, we have some association with one people, they are teaching like so many things. You see the mood, this is loud. What we do, we are thinking, oh, and this money I can for self. Because I don't have money. I have attached to these things. Until next day. They, I think they know that I am here. This is so wonderful. That's why one day, and he said that you go search. Because I feel this is the place that you live in. It's one day. Now we need some education here and this and good for ones because our internal desires. One day we should be there. This is one day I have what is yes, before you go away, if you really read more and prepare yourself for more reading, then you can get there. Now I mean, yes, yes, yes. Stay here first, and just take this moment and go to and come back and serve me. This is the new way we bring something But you can make sometimes not everyone. Everyone's knowing.
I know a few. Two. I mean a few. Two people who they have invited us.